Hi, I'm Brad Barth, senior reporter with SC Media, and I'm here again at the RSA conference in San Francisco. My newest guest is Mark Nunnikhoven, VP of Cloud Research at Trend Micro. Mark, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
A few questions for you. Let's start with, I know you're here, you hosted a seminar early on in the conference, so maybe you can talk a little bit about that and your general impressions of what you've seen at the show so far.
Yeah, for sure. So on Monday, RSA likes to do dedicated tracks. Myself and Andrew Hay from Leo Cybersecurity ran a one-day seminar focused purely on ransomware and destructive attacks. So we try to give like a 360-degree view of the problem. We started off with the Associate District Attorney of the US coming in and giving the law enforcement perspective. We had incident responders, we had threat researchers from the vendors, some unfortunate victims, some mobile researchers, and capped it off with a surprise guest. We had Marcus Hutchins, better known as at Malware Tech Blog, come in and explain some of his perspective of finding the WannaCry kill switch, and then some of the fallout since then. Yeah. But it was a really interesting day. The hall was jam-packed, and we saw a whole bunch of examples and practical learnings to try to give people a real-world view and to let them know that they're not alone trying to deal with these problems.
Speaking of ransomware, late in March, the city of Atlanta was hit by the SamSam ransomware. They've been kind of reeling ever since, spending millions of dollars dealing with this. Really the first time that a major city like this has been hit in such a prominent way. What are your overall general reactions to that incident?
Yeah, so that came up a lot in the seminar, because it's an unfortunate example, and it's absolutely the biggest civil sort of city organization that we've seen hit at scale, because they actually had to shut down services to citizens, and that's a significant impact. When we were discussing the issue, and it was a lot of interactivity with the crowd, so it really was a discussion, was that this was a known ransomware. This was a known variant. There was protections against it, and that really hit home how us in the security community may be comfortable with saying, okay, we know how to deal with ransomware, it's pretty straightforward, it's 1, 2, 3 and you're done. The real challenges of an organization that distributes computing across a number of areas within the city, right? You can go up to any community center, any fitness center, any pool, any number of places in the city are connected to that one network. So any one of them is a vulnerable point for the rest of it. And that's a real pragmatic challenge, and it's similar to the challenges we see in healthcare, which unfortunately there's been a few examples of healthcare getting hit as well.
Yeah. Now, despite the fact that ransomware is still clearly a considerable concern, it seems like we are seeing a little bit of a downturn in ransomware attacks in favor of crypto mining. And perhaps you could give a little insight into why that has become a popular choice for some cyber criminals.
Yeah, and so what we've seen in general, and most of the security research community is returning the same results, where ransomware attack attempts are down, but we're seeing more families of ransomware pop up. So that crime, the nature of that crime is changing a bit, where it seems to be a little more targeted, a little more surgical. Over the last few years, it's sort of been the spray and pray method. If they can infect anybody, they will. And that goes back to Atlanta, where the ransom was relatively low for an organization like a city that has shut down services. So we're seeing that go a little more targeted, and that's leaving a gap at the lower end of the cyber criminal chain, where we're seeing those criminals switch to crypto mining because it's far simpler for them. It's one less step. As soon as they get an infection, they're potentially making money, as opposed to teaching you how to mine, how to get a Bitcoin wallet open, how to transfer money into Bitcoin to send it to them. There's a lot of customer service overhead in ransomware, which sounds ridiculous, but it's very true. Where crypto mining, as long as they launch malicious JavaScript in your browser or a full implant on your desktop, there's a potential for them to have an immediate financial gain. So less per hit, but more hits in general, and that's where cyber criminals like to play. Is easy money, that's where they're going to be.
Sure. Now, since you're a VP of Cloud Research, I would be remiss not to at least ask you about this epidemic of openly configured, misconfigured AWS storage buckets that have resulted in all of these data leaks and breaches. Is there something not intuitive about the process of configuring these storage servers that this keeps happening? I'm really baffled by what's behind this.
Yeah, I feel like we need a second shot for a slow-mo as my head hits the desk. because it's a really frustrating situation. And there was another one that popped up last night with a company that I won't name on camera, but Chris Vickery at UpGuard discovered this again. This is, I think, the 8th one this year that he's discovered, where millions of personally identifiable records were left in an exposed storage container in S3. You would think, as you phrased in the question, that it's an unintuitive system. They are locked down and secured by default, which means every time we see a breach like this, somebody along the way has made an explicit choice, whether they realize it or not, to flip those buckets to be public. My frustration working in the cloud, working with companies in the cloud, is that there's a lot of free tools available from AWS and the other providers, from the community, to look for mistakes like this. It's really a question of education. We need to do better from the security community, is educating folks to understand what their responsibilities are and how they can automate that. And that's really kind of the general push for cloud security, is a lot of automation. That challenges a lot of skill sets for security teams. They need to get far more comfortable with that automation concept.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate you joining us and taking some time. Mark Nunnikhoven from Trend Micro, and I'm Bradley Barth, senior reporter with SC Media, and until next time, have a safe day online.